Hello, welcome back to Hydroponics Daily with me, Dr. Russell Sharp. Today we're going to be talking about a subject I didn't think was a problem in hydroponics, but we had an inquiry this week that proved otherwise, and that is slugs and snails in hydroponic systems. So we had a customer that had a pest. They had slugs in their hydroponic system, their nutrient film technique, their NFT system. It was a pretty small scale grow, but they seemed to be attracting and growing lots of slugs. And they weren't like these sorts of aquatic snails and things like this you can get when you're keeping fish in a fish tank. They were proper slugs that were sort of eating his plants, and they're sort of attracted to the damp conditions. He wasn't using a base fertilizer, he was using seaweed extract. But I've taken that with a pinch of salt because there's a brand called Maxi Crop here in the UK, sold in a lot of garden centres and sold as seaweed extract, but it has a lot of other additions to it to make it a fertilizer. So probably using one of those, I would have thought, to get a crop out of seaweed extract. Anyway, he was getting lots of slugs and he asked for our advice. And the first thing, you could use beneficial nematodes. There's a species with a fantastic name called Phasmarhabditis hermaphrodita. I remember that because it's so complicated. Interestingly, the people who make that product, BASF, they introduced a Californian species, mainly because the patent was lost on hermaphrodita, and so they could patent the Californian one, but they said it was a better one. They called it Nemaslug 2.0. Well, I don't believe that it was a better one. I just think it was patentable, and so their share price was higher because of it. The only way they could get it released in the UK and Europe was if it was a native species. So they actually found this Californian species in one location in Wales, which is very convenient, isn't it? So then it was found to be a native species of nematode. So what nematodes do is they burrow into the slug and give it blood poisoning. What's the word for that? That's not haemophilia, is it? What is it? I'm going to stop this podcast now and pretend like I'm just pluck the answer out the top of my head. Septicemia, of course, or sepsis. So the slug gets sepsis, and the bacteria, the slugs need the bacteria on them in order for them to survive, because the bacteria infect the slug and kill it off, and then the nematodes can go in and eat all the dead, decaying material. Pretty gross. However, there's a downside to the nematodes, is they don't always work. They drown. So in an NFT system, if they were attacking the roots, the slugs, then the nematodes won't be able to get any of the root system. And the other downside is they don't work in cold temperatures. So it's been pretty cold in the UK recently, so they probably wouldn't have worked the temperatures we've had over the Easter break. It's been really cold. It's warming up a bit now, so they might start to work. And also there's a supply and demand. Often the nematodes aren't available for sale. There is another option in that you can protect your plants against it by spraying ferric phosphate on them. At Utrema here, we sell the only liquid ferric phosphate solution that is available on the market. If you're in America, you can't get it. If you're in the UK, you can currently from us. It's not registered as a slug killer because I have to spend £1 million to register it as a slug killer. So it's a protector. And you can buy slug pellets. These are also based on ferric phosphate. However, they're not as good as the old style. Well, they're not as good. They're not as effective as the old style slug pellets from before, like 2018. And they don't attract slugs to them. So if you put slugs around your hydroponic system, the slugs wouldn't go to them and eat them and kill them like the old style slug pellets would. So we believe our product is a better product because you can spray it on the plant, or you can spray it into the soil where the slugs are and the snails are. And they're very rarely just on the surface where the slug pellets are, so they're pretty useless there, slug pellets. Old style slug pellets used to be made from a chemical called metaldehyde, which was really effective. And it was actually discovered because metaldehyde was being used as a fuel by campers in France. And then the farmer noticed all these slugs were dying around where the campers had been. And so they developed it into a slug pellet. It was really effective. I keep on saying good. No, it was really effective because the slugs were attracted to it and then they ate it and they were instantly killed. But the downside was metaldehyde is crazy toxic. And if your dog eats a slug pellet, it's the most horrific death. I won't describe the death, but it's up there with, 18 R18 films, it's like a horror movie. So metaldehyde was banned because so many people and so many pets were getting poisoned. And also, one of the main reasons that pesticides get banned is because the water companies couldn't take it out of tap water. It was really, really difficult. And even now, where people use metaldehyde on their allotments and gardens, where there's people still got these slug pellets from before 2018 in the UK, then they still can pick that up in the water system where they can locate where people are using them. Not sure if it can still be used in America, metaldehyde-based slug pellets. You can also buy sheep wool-based things to keep plants off. They don't work. Copper bands because they think that the electrical signals stop them. That's nonsense. They don't. Slugs will walk straight over them. Beer traps are debatable. So you can put beer in a bowl and slugs will come and eat it and then drown. However, if you actually put a time-lapse camera on it, you'll find that 95% of the slugs just go for a bit of a drink, get a bit drunk, and then wander off on their merry way. And so only a small subsection of the slugs snails will get trapped. That's a problem because it's bringing slugs and snails into your garden, into your grow room or grow area, and you might not be killing them. So you might actually be making the problem worse for yourself. Other options against slugs and snails is to go out at night with a hand torch or a head torch and just crunch them under your foot. And because they're nocturnal mostly. It's important to kill them quickly as well because they are a mollusk. And as you know, you might know that mollusks like octopuses and slugs, they feel pain and they have opioid receptors in their nerves. So they're not like insects or mites where they don't feel any pain. Mollusks feel pain. So if you're going to kill them fast. Otherwise, it's cruel. And that's the reason you shouldn't pour salt on them as well. 2 reasons you shouldn't pour pot salt on them. It's cruel. It's a horrible, painful death. And also, secondly, salt will poison the soil in the area for your plants. Plants hate salt as well. Its sodium is like arsenic to plants, I say, and it's really toxic. So don't pour salt on them. The quickest way, I used to pour salt on a tomato plant in front of my students, and by the end of the lecture, after an hour, the tomato plant would be dead. You couldn't do that with a weed killer. It wouldn't be dead after an hour with a weed killer. So pretty toxic sodium. So that's the main methods of control of slugs and snails. Slugs are the number one pest and disease of UK horticulture. Probably not the same in America because you're not as wet and just constantly raining as here in the UK. Plants that are particularly prone to getting attacked by slugs and snails are hostas, lettuce, Chinese lanterns and delphiniums are also prone to attack by slugs. Plants that are resistant to slugs and snails often have a high caffeine content. And then extracts of coffee grounds, tea, just cold tea often keep slugs and snails off. And plantago, plantain, that not the banana type plant from the Caribbean, but the plantain that grows in the UK, that has high levels of caffeic acid, and that is resistant to slugs and snails as well. Slugs normally travel about 10 meters per day. It's not very fast, is it? We have a new species of slug in the UK called the Spanish slug, and the Spanish slug is invading and is thought to be even worse for gardens. It lays a lot more eggs, attacks native slugs, I think, and just outcompetes everything and is even worse for gardens. And it prefers drier, warmer conditions. So with climate change, that could be more of a pest in UK gardens. So for our customer that contacted us with the slug problem on his NFT system, we recommended a spray of the lower leaves, lower portion of the plants with the ferric phosphate solution, which we call Slugger. He could potentially add the Slugger to his nutrient solution, but it wouldn't actually have any effect on keeping slugs out of the NFT system there because it would be just diluted down and it would just add nutrients to his solution. It is a product that I've recommended to a number of hydroponic growers in the past when they get into flowering, because I'm not a big fan of PK products. I think there's already enough potassium in hydroponic feeds and they build up over time and build up through the growth cycle. But if you can add phosphorus alongside iron, iron builds weight, and a product that's sold by weight, iron is a brilliant product. So I always recommend people apply our one of our iron products, either Ultimate Iron or Slugger or something like that when they're in flowering. And then you spray it on your leaves and you protect against slugs as well. If you've had a problem with slugs and snails in your hydroponic garden, please do get in touch. I'd love to know how you dealt with it and what you thought was the cause of it. A word of warning as well, don't always assume that the big blob slimy thing eating your plants is a slug. A lot of sawfly larvae also look like slugs. So the cherry slug and the pear sawfly on pears, cherries, anything in sort of stone fruits, orchard crops, but many other types of sawfly, the larvae will look like slugs. They're just glutinous to stop birds from eating them. Other sawfly larvae can look like caterpillars and produce an ornate dances, look amazing. Problem with sawflies is that if you do not know you've got a problem, they eat the plant from the inside out. And so from the center of the sort of plant to the outer leaves later. So you can indent canopies like gooseberry sawfly. Once you see them on the outside leaves, game over. The whole of the plant's been destroyed. So another reason, so I say on virtually every one of these podcasts, check your plants for pest and disease daily. Don't water your plants every day if you're growing in cocoa or soil or compost, but do check them every single day for pest and disease. And if you've got an automated system, you're going to be growing into your grow room anyway. You need something to do because everything's automated. That's the one thing that cannot be automated yet. I don't know of an automated AI camera that can spot spider mites, slugs, thrips, things like that. So check your plants for pest and disease now. And the worst case scenario is you find a few pest and disease, but the worst case scenario is you don't check for them and you get an infestation. That's been Hydroponics Daily for today. Slugs and snails in hydroponics. Who would have thought it? Click follow for more absolute nonsense like this every single day of 2025. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.